and welcome back to the Scenario 7 podcast. My name is Sam, and today I'm joined by my two lovely co-hosts. It's Josh Baker and Joe Roberts. How are you two doing?
I am doing all right, actually. I say all right. Not the best day, but it was still an entertaining day and good to have Formula One back.
Yeah, exactly. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Sam.
Good. That's great to hear. And we are here for a Bahrain Grand Prix review. Of course, today was the first race of the Formula One season. Very exciting. And in my opinion, anyway, it got off to a good start. But let's go back to Saturday. Let's go back to qualifying first. And what were some of your thoughts from the first qualifying session of the year? I think it's fair to say there were quite a few surprises.
I don't know where to start. We got Haas completely wrong. I need to bite the bullet and say that I got Haas completely wrong, as I think I said they were a disgrace in the review, the preview, which I need to really take that. I really need to take that back. And then the McLarens, I think the porpoising, as in like the whole floor moving, affected basically every Mercedes engine car. So the Mercedes engine cars, we need to sort that out. That's like Mercedes, Aston Martin, and McLaren. And then the Ferrari power cars like Haas did really well. Alfa Romeo with Bottas and P6, and obviously the Ferraris did really well. And yeah, it was quite interesting to see how qualifying went. Just basically, it was just some of it was just based off talent, like Magnussen getting to the top 10, and a surprise with Alex Albon doing a super Saturday as Russell did last year with that Williams, which looks like the worst car.
Yeah, Joe has pretty much said it all. I think I'll just add on to it. I enjoyed how mixed up the grid was, because you didn't see the usual pattern of, say, both Mercedes at the top, then follow both Red Bulls, and follow McLarens or Ferraris. It was really, really mixed up, which is good to see, and hopefully it continues throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. It was mixed up. I think it mirrored the race in many aspects. You had the Aston Martins who looked slow, potentially giving Williams the competition for the worst car on the grid. Ricardo coming in 18th was no surprise, in my opinion, anyway. And I've seen a lot of people giving him criticism, which I think is quite unfair. You've got to take into account the fact that he's had no testing to get used to the car, and this weekend was his first time in the car since Spain testing, which a lot of changes has been made since then. So I think people need to cut Ricardo some slack. Haas and Alfa have improved tenfold, and Bottas and Magnussen put in some fantastic performances in qualifying. Mercedes don't look like they had the pace of Red Bull and Ferrari, who put in two very good times, but generally the qualifying times were not as quick as last year, which is expected, but still quite interesting. Let's move on to the race. It was the first race of the season, as I said. Do you think it was a good race to get the season started? And what were some general thoughts you had on the race?
I'd say so. Yeah, it was entertaining, especially for the start, because you could see how close the drivers could stay with each other. I think there was one point, even on the first or second lap, where there was at least 6+ cars pretty much almost going through the same corner at the same time within a couple of meters from each other, which just shows how much these cars are able to stay behind each other and stay close for longer periods of time, which will make for more interesting racing. And then obviously to have the drama at the end, which just increases the entertainment of the race. So yeah, I'd say it was a good start. You still get the odd patch in the middle where it's down to strategies and there's not much overtaking, but I think that happens in most races, because everyone will start to fade off at some point. But I'd say just because of the drama it caused and entertainment from start to finish, I'd say it was a good opening race.
Yeah, I agree with Josh. I think it was a good opening race. I think the fact that it was science is possibly a free stop, I think shows, I would say, the progression in terms of in terms of the cars making like the tire degradation on the car on the tires, and like the following, that the slipstream was like the DRS was proper powerful around this track, which might need to probably be tweaked in the future, just due to the fact it might make it too OP to basically overtake. But the really encouraging sign was that I think they put out the 3 hardest compounds, I think there was, and it made potentially a free stop, which I think means it makes racing, the racing more exciting. And hopefully in Saudi Arabia, it's not a traditional one stop. I think it was last year, if I'm mistaken. So yeah, it was a good start.
Yeah, no, it certainly was. I think it was a good race. As you said about the 3 stop, it's encouraging to see some teams take some very aggressive strategies, and I thought that the racing was pretty good. I mean, we didn't really have many incidents. There was definitely talk at around lap 40 of, is the first race of the season going to have all 20 cars finish, especially after all the build up of the brake temperatures, and it's a new car. We don't know how it's going to deal with the intense conditions of Bahrain. But in the end, we didn't have all cars finish, but it was very interesting anyway. We had some great battles, and yeah, for a first race of the season, I think it was very good. I think it's definitely done Bahrain's hopes of hosting the first race of the season in the future some good, with some great racing. And yeah, very, very happy with the first race. Let's go through a few of the incidents now. Only one of them's really a talking point, and it's barely a talking point, to be honest, when on lap 1, Esteban Ocon spans Schumacher at turn 6. Does anyone here disagree that it was a 5-second penalty? Because that was the decision that the FIA made.
Yeah, it was the perfect decision. And obviously, it now shows you can't spin people out. So, and also crash into people. So, yeah, it was a good decision. I'm very surprised Mick Schumacher hold on to it as well, because I think he only lost 1 position from that spin.
Yeah, no, he did catch it well, didn't he? He did really well there. So yeah, 5-second penalty was perfect. Joe, I don't think you could spin people last year, to be fair. Like, I don't think it's ever been a rule that you were allowed to spin people. But yeah, it is good to see that they were on top of that, even on lap 1, when sometimes, let's say, they were lenient. Let's look at, the next big thing happened on lap 46, where Gasly's car burst into flames. It's looking like a suspected MGU-K failure, which brought out the safety car, which added all the drama at the end. Then on lap 54, Verstappen DNF'd with a suspected fuel pump issue. And then on lap 57, the last lap, heartbreak for Sergio Perez, who was going to get the podium. He had 2 DRS straights to hold on, and I was so confident he was going to do it. And then engine just turned off, or suspected fuel pump issue. Same thing that happened with Verstappen, which was gutting, but not the same issue with Gasly, despite the fact that they're both powered by Red Bull. They're different issues, which was interesting. But I wanted to mention quickly the differences in the powertrains from different teams. So, for example, Red Bull, 3 out of 4 of their powered cars DNF'd. With Mercedes, every car between P12 and P17 were all Mercedes power, and then Ferrari, all their cars were in the top 10 by Mick Schumacher, who was in 11th. Does this look like a trend that you think will continue as the season goes on? Do Ferrari have the best package on the grid?
I personally think this trend will continue for the foreseeable future. I think for the start of the season, I think, yes, the Ferrari powered cars look the best, look the strongest. Closely followed by Red Bull, just seem to have a few issues to resolve. But I think as the season goes on and there's more time in between races and more time to develop the cars, you'll see the likes of the Mercedes powered cars getting closer to the pack and joining the hunt and joining the fight towards the top of the pack. But yeah, from testing from today, it certainly does seem like the Ferrari powered cars are the ones to look out for and the ones who will set alight the sport for the moment.
I don't know. I think it's a hard one because there was, I think on the broadcast it was saying, I think Martin Brundle, Ted Kravitz said something that the Aston Martin had to raise their ride height so much that to avoid the porpoising in the qualifying and the race, that it made them basically lose I think it's like 7/10, which is in a lap is quite a considerable margin. So it could basically just be be about the design of each of the Mercedes engine cars just not doing very, very well, the porpoising that is happening, the floor moving, because obviously different engines have different shapes and different packages around the cars. So I think we will see the Mercedes engine power when the Mercedes fix their porpoising issue, which listening to the notebook, I think the earliest, and again everything made will be in I think the European season. So I would say at the moment Ferrari on top, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Mercedes get level with the Red Bull or the Ferrari power units.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think being specific with the Mercedes team, I think that give them a few races. I've said this all along. I thought that Ferrari and Red Bull would start off strong and Mercedes will grow into this season. And it's whether Ferrari and Red Bull will have got a big enough gap for when Mercedes get their car into a competitive mode. So it'll be interesting to see when that is. I think that the Mercedes will come good. But yeah, Ferrari definitely looking very strong at the moment. Let's move into our team by team breakdown. We're going through each team and we're going to go through them in the order of where they are in the constructors. Only been one race, of course, but we're going to go through it in that order, starting with Ferrari. Of course, Charles Leclerc winning the race, qualifying first, finishing first, and getting the fastest lap. And his teammate, Carlos Sainz, starting third and finishing second, make it the perfect weekend for Ferrari. How would you summarize their weekend?
The best possible start is pretty much what you can say. We've pretty much spoken about them already quite a lot. They just showed how dominant they are at the moment with the new rule changes. They looked quick in both short and long runs during testing, and they've shown that and brought it across to the actual race weekends, and they've carried on looking like they'll be the ones to catch for the foreseeable future. But if it wasn't for the issues that Red Bull had, then they would have had competition. But fair play to them. They stuck for it, had no issues, and they've certainly built themselves a car that can challenge quite high up this season. So yeah, the perfect start for them, and I'm sure it will continue.
Yeah, as basically what Josh said, I think it's the perfect start. I think Ferrari just I can't when's Imola? I think it's in after Australia, so it's in the 4th round. I think if Ferrari, for example, win the next 2 races, they could be quite a bit ahead, so that could help them defend that gap, as you said, Sam, where Mercedes will probably start attacking them when it goes down to like Britain and around those racetracks. So I think it's a good start for Ferrari, but it's just, I think, trying to get the head start on the with the Mercedes and obviously the Red Bull DNFing.
Yeah, no, I want to give a big shout out to Charles Leclerc, because not only putting the car on pole, he did have that, of course, that advantage, but Max Verstappen came back at him very heavily over a number of laps, and Leclerc's racecraft was superb. He kept Verstappen behind him, even though Verstappen dive bombed into turn 1 every time, but then Leclerc would get him at the next DRS straight. His racecraft was superb, and looking at Sainz, he talked a lot about this being his toughest weekend in a Ferrari, and he's come second. It's not too bad considering how he's had quite a few problems apparently. So I can definitely see him challenging Leclerc. If they're going to be the team that are going to be winning the most races, I see Sainz starting to really challenge at the front. If he can get whatever issues he had this weekend sorted out, then he's going to be a very strong competitor. And I'm excited to see what he can do. Now on to Mercedes, who are sitting second in the constructors. Had Lewis Hamilton, first of all, starting 5th and finishing 3rd, and George Russell starting 9th and finishing 4th. Was this weekend a case of damage limitation?
Yes. I think as we probably said at the beginning, I think it's definitely down limitations, and also picking up the scraps where the like Ferrari or Red Bull DNF because of reliability. I think it kind of showed today that the Mercedes and the Ferrari power cars are the most reliable, as in the 3 that DNF'd were Red Bull power. So they've got that ticked. It's just, can they resolve the problems with the purposing of the car, meaning they have to lift the ride height up, which means they're obviously going to be a lot slower. So yeah, it was a very good weekend. Lewis did very well. A bit of odd strategy, pitting on, I think it was lap 12. I think it was, yeah, lap 12, really early. Then the hards were just not like rubber. They were just really slow. And then went on back onto the mediums, which I think he felt comfortable with. I think if they look back on it, they probably would want to just do medium. And then George Russell just has to plug away and learn from Hamilton and just close in that gap to the 7-time world champion.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what Joe said. It was definitely damage limitation and some, I think, because they got quite fortunate in the way to get 3rd and 4th from the way that both Red Bull cars just DNF'd. But still, it was, I think, the best possible outcome they could have hoped for with the issues that they have. But yeah, they seemed very happy. It was quite strange to see Toto and the Mercedes team, especially Hamilton, celebrating like that for a 3rd place, and we're so used to them celebrating wins pretty much week in, week out. But yeah, it was definitely damage limitation for them this weekend.
Yeah. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but 3rd in the constructors are Haas. they're third. With 10 points, they're third in the constructors. I can't believe it. I thought they'd improve this season, but I didn't think they'd improve this much, especially in the first race. You had, first of all, the returning driver, Kevin Magnussen, who hasn't raced an F1 car, I think they said, for 14 months, which is a long time in the sport. And not only qualifying seventh, which was an impressive feat in itself, but to finish fifth in a Haas, beating out so much competition. Wow. And then Mick Schumacher starting 12th and finishing 11th, despite spinning on lap 1, which he caught very well, I have to say. But yeah, Haas in third in the constructors. Guys, describe their weekend for me.
We have very much got them very, very wrong with our predictions. But what a weekend for them to come from finishing so far last in every race last season to competing quite high up the field with a very competitive car. It's like a dream come true for Günther Steiner and the team. You can just see from the celebrations afterwards, and when K-Mag crossed the line with all the pit crew along the wall celebrating him as he crossed the line. It's just great to see. They deserve it. It seems as though they put a lot of work into this year's car from during last year when they had quite a low time last year. But yeah, it's great to see them back fighting. I think it's their fifth top 5, I think, ever, something like that. So it's good. It was a great result for them, and just to see K-Mag come back, having hardly driving a car in ages, and then to have a complete learn a complete new kind of car, it just shows what kind of driver he is and how strange it was of their decision to get rid of him last season. So yeah, that's K-Mag. Obviously, we all know how good he is. But, even Mick Schumacher, he looked good. He looked comfortable and he looked competitive. It was a shame that he's only one place out of the top 10. But other days, when he feels more comfortable in the car, because he's still learning, of course. It's only his second season, so he'll learn more about the car and learn more about F1, and eventually his day will come where he finally get into the points.
Yeah, I think as Josh said, we've got Haas completely wrong. I won't be surprised our predictions at the beginning of the season we only get like 3 right. As in just like we'll probably be like the top 6 potentially you'll get right, and then obviously the top 3. Kevin Magnussen, as it shows why they got rid of Mazepin. Obviously the political and the geopolitics of it just obviously took over, but I think Günther Steiner will be absolutely happy that he got rid of Mazepin, and swearing it as he does about what I can't remember. I can't remember what one of the Russian sponsors said, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens in the Netflix Drive Survive. The last 2 years, it looks like they've been working on this. Not what's the word? Just twiddling their thumbs, as I described it. So yeah, that'd be good. And Kevin Magnussen is doing very well. And then, as obviously Josh said, Mick Schumacher, very impressive drive. And again, get used to the car. He will definitely score points because of the fact that he has got that talent there.
Yeah, I can't believe we're talking about Haas in a positive vein, especially after all the abuse we gave them last season. It really is chalk and cheese. And moving on to 4th place is another team that no one expected to be there. It's Alfa Romeo. First of all, Valtteri Bottas qualifying 6th, finishing 6th in his first drive in the Alfa Romeo after his move from Mercedes. And Guan Yu Zhou qualifying 15th and finishing 10th in his first race in F1. How do you sum up Alfa Romeo?
I would say decent, as in obviously you would expect Bottas to do better, I would say, because the fact is he had a horrific start like he always, I think, did at Mercedes. He's still I would say hasn't got that sort of thing ironed out. But his race pace was ridiculous, I would say. He cut through the field, and just kind of showed why he is still in the sport and why he's a top driver, and also and also just the fact that you can be Lewis Hamilton's teammate but also be a very good driver, because obviously he has so much slack for basically doing most people say a very poor job at Mercedes being his teammate. But then Guan Yu Zhou did very well. I was very surprised because he looked a bit tentative on the brakes. On his interview at the after the race, he said he was just trying to get used to the braking in the cars. So if he irons that out, it should effectively be a very successful run for Alfa Romeo this season, if the reliability and other teams that we'll speak about later on, if they don't sort their problems out, they could have a very successful season.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was a very positive start for Alfa Romeo, and it was great to see Bottas still being able to fight high up, even in a different car. I think he achieved the best that he probably could have. Probably would have been lower without the DNS, but still a great finish, a great result for them, and I'm sure he'll continue to put in performances like that for the team in general. But with Guan Yu Zhou, it was just a weight off his shoulders, I think, to get a point in the first race of your F1 career. It just takes a massive weight off his shoulder. There's no more pressure, or not as much pressure as there would be to get a point, like Mick maybe. But it was just great to see him to get that point and drive well to get it. And then afterwards, when he ran to his I think was it race engineer or something like that, looked really emotional with the fact that he got a point on his debut. It just shows how much it means to everyone in the sport, how much one singular point means to everyone within Formula One.
Yes, certainly. I mean, I saw his tweet yesterday on Saturday in his reaction of getting to Q2, and he was so happy with that. Never mind finishing 10th. I need to remember that he wants to be called Zhou Guan Yu. I need to get that in my head. Zhou Guan Yu, not Guan Yu Zhou. But I'm sure it doesn't matter anyway, but need to get a habit of calling him Zhou Guan Yu. Anyway, with Bottas, I think that this perfectly summed him up this weekend almost, in the fact that he performed very well in qualifying, and then he showed his maybe issues in the racecraft part of his repertoire. With the start, he did drop down a lot of positions, but then did climb up to 6th. So I do have doubts about how good his racecraft is, but his qualification was fantastic, and 6th place shows he can't have that bad racecraft. But I think as the season goes on, we'll have to see what happens with it. It's one to watch anyway. Let's move on now to Alpine. And they had a very run-of-the-mill weekend, really. It was very similar to last season. You had Esteban Ocon starting 11th, finishing 7th, which actually I feel like is pretty good, bearing in mind he had a 5-second penalty. And then Fernando Alonso starting 8th, finishing 9th. Not really sure what happened with the strategy there. Bit of an interesting one. But yeah, 8 points altogether. Pretty similar to last season. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I haven't really got much to add to that. It's just I think just the same as last season. Sticking towards the back end of the top 10, unless you get a miracle like Hungary. But yeah, it's just pretty much the same as last season. But it's good for them because it shows that they are able to compete for the points probably regularly for every race, and it shows well how the drivers can adapt quickly to their car and put in performances like that to keep the team ticking over and hopefully climb the Constructors' Championship quicker than they did last year. But we'll see. It's only the first race. Other teams, like we've said, might develop better and get rid of their problems, and then they might start slowly falling down the table. But you never know; anything could happen. But yeah, I say a good start for them.
Are we talking about Alpine?
Yes, Alpine.
Yes. Yeah, I was just checking where Ocon finished. Yeah, I think it's a decent start. I think if it wasn't for the two DNFs, Alonso would have finished 11th, and then Ocon would have finished 9th. So I think it's a good start for Alpine. I think they need to get as much points as ahead of the Williams, obviously McLaren will probably be main danger, and Aston Martin and AlphaTauri. I think so. Yeah, it's a good haul of points, and there's nothing much really to add because you two have said it all.
Yeah, let's look at AlphaTauri, the last team that got any points this weekend, and they were all got by one driver. That man being Yuki Tsunoda, not the man that many people would think I'd say, but 16th to 8th for him. And he's making Bahrain his own after a superb drive in his first race last season. He drove very well today as well, I think it's fair to say. And then with Pierre Gasly, 10th to DNF, very unlucky with his car bursting into flames with a suspected MGUK failure. How do you rate AlphaTauri?
AlphaTauri, I would say, obviously, if Gasly didn't get their DNF, I think it was a very good performance from them. Especially, I would say Tsunoda does deserve a mention for driver of the day. Obviously, he's not mine, but he's from being really immature in an F1 car last season, he's really grown into his role. I remember when the F2 was going on, when you were watching it, and you say, "Oh, the Red Bull Academy drivers, there's so many in F2." With this performance, I kind of think it puts the lid on any early promotions with Tsunoda's good performance.
Yeah, just echoing again what Joe said, is without Gasly's issue, I think it would have been a good weekend for the team. I don't think it still was, because they still got a decent amount of points with Yuki. And I think it will definitely give Yuki some confidence to go 1-0 up against his teammate this early on. I know it's kind of a free win, but any win can count, and it will help with him mentally. And he put in a good shift to climb 8 places. And I think they'll grow from it, learn from their issues, and they'll just get stronger. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we certainly will. Tsunoda for me was one of 2 that I was going to choose for driver of the day. Didn't choose him in the end, went with someone else. If he gets his qualifying sorted out, he'll be very talented. As Joe said, it looks like he's maturing, which I think is a massive positive. And I personally think that he will improve this year, and we'll start seeing the Yuki Tsunoda that a lot of people thought we perhaps see next year, or last year, sorry. But you've got to give him a season, and this is second season. This is a make or break for him, and certainly a good start. Talking about the Red Bull Driver Academy in F2, Ayumu Iwasa. I'm going to put that name out there now. Watch out for him. Unbelievable in F2 this weekend. Just had to throw it in there, and I thought that was a good time to mention him after you mentioned the Red Bull Driver Academy. Let's move on to Aston Martin. They had a driver filling in this weekend, and Nico Hülkenberg, after Sebastian Vettel got COVID. He finished 17th after qualifying 17th. And then the other driver, Lance Stroll, after starting 19th, finished 12th, which isn't too bad, I guess. How would you rate Aston Martin's weekend?
I think we're probably going to say the same thing for the other Williams and McLaren. It's getting, I don't know, as in Aston Martin have put so much, I think, I don't know, changes of getting rid of Oscar Sasnav and getting rid of all these, like, I would say, key personnels that I don't know, it doesn't feel like they're going backwards rather than forwards. And they probably need to sort it out, because I see Williams improving. I see they got a decent concept. I see McLaren have a decent concept. Obviously, I think they have some issues because of obviously not doing enough testing. But it's going to be quite some worrying times for Aston Martin, especially when seeing Haas doing really well, Alfa Romeo doing really well. And there's nothing really much to say about the drivers, as in they're pretty, I would say, pretty useless. I think you have to give sympathy for Nico Hulkenberg, the fact he outqualified Stroll. And obviously, I think had just had a really bad strategy and would have, I think, been ahead of him. But overall, Stroll was, I think, useless and absolutely awful this week.
Yeah, I think it's summed it up, and it's the same for, like you said, but the remaining teams are pretty much going to hear the same thing again. But it's just echoing what you said earlier about porpoising and trying to solve the problems before they get any worse, so they can finally start competing for points and moving up the constructors' table. It was just a poor weekend, a slow start, which means they can only see improvement. But I think I agree with Joe. The drivers that, except for Nico, I don't see Stroll. I don't see why he's in the team. I think he's only there because, like a Mazepin, it's because of his dad. He doesn't show any sort of improvement, any sort of talent week in, week out. It's just the same thing over and over again. But forget about that, and then just focusing on the team. It's just the issues need to resolve quickly, and hopefully they will. But it's just once that gets sorted, then we'll see their true nature. And if they stay where they are, even after that, then that just shows that how poor they're doing.
Aston Martin really frustrate me as someone who very much likes their team. With Lance Stroll, he's not very good at qualifying. I think that's very fair to say. I don't think he's that bad during the race. I think he's all right at the race, but his qualifying so bad that if he doesn't improve it, then he's not going to fight for points. And then with Hulkenberg, he's one of my favourite drivers. I was so happy to get an opportunity to out-qualify Stroll was an achievement. But as you said, Joe, the strategy was awful for him, and saw him finish very low down through no fault of his own. Aston Martin, their driver lineup, as you said, I don't think Stroll's that bad, but I don't think Stroll and Vettel is a particularly strong driver lineup, especially when you see the quality in the field and the fact that it looks like the car they've produced this year is rubbish is so frustrating. You've got to bear in mind that Force India and Racing Point had a lot of money struggles, and yet their lowest constructors finish was 7th. And Aston Martin were 7th last year, and this year looks like they've got a worse car compared to the rest of the grid. And this is an Aston Martin team that has so much more money, has a much bigger wealth and resources. But it looks like from the off, I know we're going off one race and you can't make assumptions too quickly, but if they're racing like this, they're going to be battling for 9th or 10th, maybe 8th at a push. They need to improve. And with the amount of money they've got and how they did when they were at Racing Point and Force India on a shoestring budget, very frustrating, and it does really annoy me. Next is Williams with Alex Albon making his return to F1 after a year's absence. He qualified 14th, which I thought was a good achievement in that car, and then finishing 13th. And then Nicholas Latifi starting last and finishing 16th, which wasn't last out of the cars that did finish. How would you rate Williams's weekend? Is it a similar story to Aston Martin?
Yeah, but I think they've got at least one positive within their camp, and that's Alex Albon. The fact that he got that car past Q1 and then finished above two McLarens, his teammate and Hulkenberg, just shows what kind of a driver he is and how he is going to be similar to Russell and get the best possible outcome out of that car, which doesn't look the best once again this season. So I think those struggles may continue. Hopefully, again, like I said, and I will say again, the developments will hopefully improve the team and make them fight higher up the field. But from perspective from just Bahrain, one positive was the fact Alex Albon looks like a decent driver behind the car. But if he wants to get any higher, then the team needs to start doing things better.
Yeah. I think Josh has said. Well, the one thing I would say is, I think it shows how bad Latifi is in terms of the way that he qualified last, and also I'm going to count Nico Hulkenberg out of this, because the fact is it was just poor strategy choice. The Latifi wasn't particularly good. I think with the car, I think again it's to do with the porpoising, as in the car looks clever. It might be just basically too clever that they've just gone completely the wrong way in the car. And Alex Albon shows why he was at Red Bull, and probably shows why he probably, if there's mistakes from Perez, if Gasly leaves, if Tsunoda has has a very poor season, that he could get moved back into the Red Bull fold. So I think, as Josh said, I think that's the one positive you can take from it, is that Williams have a solid test driver in terms of he knows what he wants, and also a very, very good race driver in Alex Albon.
I'm not going to judge Nicholas Latifi too early. It's the first race of the season. I know I've just judged loads of other drivers early, but I don't mind Latifi. He is admittedly a pay driver, and there are better drivers that should probably be in the sport, but I'm going to give him some time this season. I like Latifi, and Albon did as good a job as he possibly could have. Now on to the McLaren. And this isn't a team that we thought would be in 9th. I'm not going to lie, after the first race. We're saying that the team in 10th isn't the team we thought would be in 10th. But first off, McLaren, let's start with Daniel Ricardo, starting 18th, actually finishing ahead of his teammate in the end, finishing 14th. I mean, not saying it's a very impressive finish, but did end up beating your teammate. And a lot of the time when you've got a car that's not very good, beating your teammate is the main objective almost. And then you had Lando Norris, who started 13th and finished 15th. I think they both just had nightmare starts in the end, and that didn't really help them. And then strategy, and it all just kind of went wrong. What would you make of the McLaren? I mean, Josh, you're obviously not very happy about it.
Yeah, they both had nightmare starts. I think Ricardo went straight to the back of the field, and I think Lando dropped to 17th or 18th at one point. So I don't really know what happened there, but nothing went for them. They couldn't improve. They had no pace. It was just disappointing. And then I think the fact that Ricardo beat Lando was because of the safety car, because I think Lando just pitted before, like a couple of laps earlier, and then for some strange reason, it must have been for used tyres. He then came back in again for the safety car, which then I think dropped him behind his teammate. But a poor weekend, that's all you can say, a disappointing one. But it's the same for majority of the Mercedes powered cars. It's just that the issues they're having, they need resolving quickly, otherwise they're just going to get dragged away from everyone else, and everyone's going to pull away from them. So they need to work hard this week, and then in the coming months to try and claw themselves back up. But yeah, it was just not the start they were looking for.
Yeah, the McLaren, so I think would absolutely diabolical today. I think they could have, I don't know. I don't know if there's a challenge between the Mercedes engine for the wooden spoon in the championship. I don't know. As in, I obviously understand the testing and that there was limited testing. Obviously, Lando Norris had to do all of it, but the fact is that it looked like, as in from if you judge from Spain testing, I think that they had a good car. I think medium speed and then obviously straight. I think they're a very good car. And then obviously going to Bahrain. I don't know if it's to do with the porpoising, as in the fact is the ride height is too high on low speed. I don't know, but this race was probably a really concerning, just due to the fact that Lando Norris didn't look quick, which he always did the last 3 years. Ricardo just was awful, obviously because of COVID, which is understandable. I think you can let him off, but yeah, it's going to be. I think this race is going to be a bit of an inquest for McLaren, as there was high hopes for them to be challenging those the Ferraris and Red Bulls and Mercedes. But I do think if they solve their issues with the floor, I think they have to rapidly develop their car in order to challenge for wins and podiums.
Yeah, yeah, it is worrying signs, and with Saudi Arabia the next track, which doesn't suit the McLaren supposedly, it is worrying. Could this be going back to 2016 McLaren? Let's hope not. Let's hope that there's a silver lining and they get their issues fixed. And Norris and Ricardo have a lot of talent between them, so hopefully they could drag McLaren up the order in the coming weeks. And bottom of the standings is Red Bull, and I know, Joe, if they stayed there the entire season, you'd be a very happy man. First of all, with Max Verstappen starting second and DNFing, and then Perez starting fourth and DNFing, both Red Bulls having nightmares towards the end of the race with fuel pump issues. Is this something that you could see going on until the future weeks? Do you think this is a potential reliability concern?
Yes. I think when it's to do with engines, I think it's was it I don't well, I think it was a couple of years ago. I can't remember what year it was. I think the Ferraris had issues. I thought, yes, when Leclerc had that, when he was leading by miles, I think there was an Alfa Romeo, I think obviously the Ferraris, and then the Haas. I think for the first 5 or 6 rounds, I think they had really bad reliability, so it could start hampering them. Vettel has gone on and absolutely slated his own team in the press conferences, and unacceptable for it to happen, because they know so much about the fuel and obviously the engine in that. So yeah, it's worrying times for Red Bull in terms of reliability, but in the race they look very, very quick, and if they don't have that fuel issue or engine issue or fuel pump issue, I think they're going to be very, very quick around Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Joe's pretty much said it all. It's just, if it wasn't for those issues, they do look they look quick, and they look like they can compete for wins and the podiums every race, but they don't solve whatever issues they had quickly, then their season's just going to get ruined from the start. like a lot of the teams at this point in time. But just to add, I quite liked that they didn't get any points this weekend, just so we can wipe that smile off of Christian Horner's face and see him struggle for once. But yeah, it was not a great start, but I'm sure they'll fix the issue pretty quickly.
Yeah, that was Perez's podium. He just had one more lap. He'd one more lap and then his car failed on him. Oh, I'm so annoyed at Red Bull. Just one more lap, just break down on the after the lap had finished. Oh, gutting, but yeah, not an ideal start for Red Bull. I think it's fair to say, though, agree that they are showing some pace. Now let's move on to our awarding of driver of the day. I think there are a few contenders here, but who have you guys gone for?
I'll start. I went with Zhou Guanyu, say it correctly, just because it was his debut in F1 and he managed to score a singular point, which is a massive achievement for a rookie in the sport. He drove well, he looked comfortable. Like Joe said, he was, I think, trying to get used to the car and especially the brakes. So he didn't do quite as well as his teammate, but that was never expected. And it probably wasn't expected for him to get points either. So for that to happen and for him to get out of Q1 as well in qualifying just shows that what a talent he is and that he does deserve the seat that he's been given. I know there may have been better drivers in F2 last season than him, but it still shows that he's been given the opportunity and he's worked hard for this opportunity and he's proved to his team that he is a good driver and he can put in results. So I went with Zhou Guanyu as my driver of the day.
Yeah, I think there was a number of them. I think you could have put Alex Albon for qualifying and then obviously doing well in the race. You could have put Tsunoda, Magnussen, Bottas, obviously Zhou Guanyu. But I went for the winner, Charles Leclerc. I think he absolutely dominated. He put up with the pressure and the dive bombs by the wild Max Verstappen. And it could, yeah, and he put up with the pressure, and I think he's not got to deal with Verstappen's antics when it comes to overtaking.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc definitely had a very impressive race, but I have gone for Kevin Magnussen. Of course, I was close to choosing Tsunoda, and I think Bottas as well. Shout out to him, but I couldn't look past him. A Haas coming fifth in F1 after so long where their car's been absolutely awful. Last season was atrocious, and I'm surprised that Gunther Steiner hadn't just retired from being team principal after that. But they trusted the process, and from the first race, it looks like the process paid off. His qualifying pace was very good, first of all, and despite the mistakes when he was battling the Mercedes, his race pace was very good as well. He drove almost a perfect race, apart from, of course, the two times he went deep when battling Mercedes, finishing fifth at his first race back in F1 when his teammate came 11th. I'm not trying to put down Schumacher. I'm just trying to show what an achievement it was that he finished six positions up on his teammate. It's a fantastic achievement, and he deserves driver of the day, getting 10 points for Haas. After that team got 0 in the entirety of last season, he's got 10 in the first race and drove a sensational race and got me some fantastic fantasy points. So I had to choose Kevin Magnussen. He is my driver of the day. And that wraps up our podcast reviewing the Bahrain Grand Prix, first race of the season. We're so glad that F1 is back. And next week is the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We'll bring you a preview. We'll bring you a review. It's great to be back. And remember to like, subscribe, download, whatever you need to do. Our social media links are in the description below. So make sure you follow them to stay up to date with all we've got coming up. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.